All right. Well, good afternoon and welcome, everyone. This is a free webinar. It's Leading with Resilience, Building Organizational Strength Through Adaptable Leadership. During the next hour, Dawn and I are going to be exploring how to develop resilience and how it can transform the way you navigate both personal and professional changes and enhance leading with resilient mindset and driving your success. Right? This webinar is recorded. Your microphones will be turned off. And we will be posting this webinar along with some handouts on Dawn and I's website. And we'll explain a little bit more about that together. For the next 50 minutes, Dawn and I will be talking about being resilient and how to add that into your toolbox. And we'll leave about 10 minutes for Q&A at the end. In the meantime, we're going to be asking some questions as the presentation continues, and you can use the chat tool to add your advice or your value or your feedback, right? Dawn, would you also like to explain a little bit or share a little bit about a giveaway we're giving?
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I'm going to share my screen right now, real quick, and to explain it a little bit. So, are you able to see?
Yes.
Okay, so it's a 7-day action plan. So we're going to be talking a lot about different essentials needed for really to build resilience as leaders. And we have a 7-day action plan. At the bottom of this action plan is our contact information. If you ever want to have a quick chat with us or whatnot, our websites and so forth. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. And without further ado, I'm going to hand the baton back to you, Roger, right now. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
All right. I'll bring it back up the presentation. All right. We should be good here now.
Yes.
Okay. All right, hang on 1 second as I get it into my full view. All right, so welcome everyone. And as we go through the presentation here, we just want to introduce ourselves. Dawn, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself first, explain a little bit about what you do and how you add value to your clients.
Absolutely. So I'm Dawn Cortese. I'm the founder of Healthy Goals, Healthy Living. I'm an executive wellness strategist, certified nutrition coach, and brain health trainer. After working more than 25 years in corporate America and after having a few of my own businesses, I saw firsthand how stress and burnout impact performance and, more importantly, people's lives. And now I work with leaders and organizations and companies to help build resilience by strengthening energy, and mindset and overall well-being. Today's all about giving you just practical ideas, conversation tools to not just handle pressure, but to lead and thrive through it. And that's exactly what I do in my day-to-day, working with organizations through workshops and through actual challenges and programs. Roger, how about you? Talk about you.
Thanks, Dawn. Appreciate it. Well, everyone, Roger Jans, 35 years plus in HR and HR management and operations, owner of RCJ Consulting. And what we specialize at RCJ Consulting is leadership and performance development. We use strength-based strategies and methodologies that you can put into play immediately. We get the leaders to lead better. We get the team performers to perform better. And we just add value and link alignment to the work and to the people. So for more information about what I do or what Dawn and I do or Dawn does, please feel free to visit our websites. They're up there. Mine is rcjnj.com. We got a lot of free information out there to help you do your work. And Dawn, your website is?
It's healthygoalshealthyliving.com.
Perfect. All right, everyone. So let's begin, right? Dawn, defining resilience, right? We heard so much about this now. People use it now as a, what do you call it? A fad word or a buzzword right now, but it really isn't, right? It's something meaningful and impactful and powerful, especially if we're leading in today's environment. So what does resilience mean to you?
So, you know, it's interesting because to me, it means adapting and persevering in the face of adversity. I'm sure everyone here can reflect on a time in which they had to do so either personally or professionally. And if I even say a time, that's like laughable because it's throughout the day, it's throughout the week, right? Throughout the year. But according to the American Psychological Association, resilience is the ability to adapt well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress. So all
Yeah.
about adapting.
Yeah, right. I mean, and my clients, from my perspective, right, coming into this webinar is just a business and leadership performance perspective, right? So, more today, right, with changing of technology and the speed in which business is being conducted, competition, even just getting people, the war on talent, right? So there's so many obstacles and challenges always coming our way. To be adaptive and persevere in the face of adversity and be able to transform challenges, right, into opportunities for growth is what really resonates with me when I think about resilience, right? I hope that resonates with everyone else. If you want to put in the chat, maybe a couple words as I go to the next slide, what if you say resilience, what's the first word or first two words that pop into your mind?
Good question. And why is it important to you?
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, Roger, in terms of, why does resilience matter? I mean, I think you'd probably agree with me. Don't you think that like change is happening all the time? It doesn't happen just once in a while. But, most teams aren't struggling because they're not capable. They're struggling because the pace of change, like it never lets up. Resilience allows people to adjust without completely burning out in the process, which is good. And the ability to bounce back and adapt is so important for decision making, because if we don't have the ability to bounce back, we're going to have issues with decision quality. Teams become reactive. We want to avoid that, right?
Yeah.
And the culture goes downhill when resilience isn't managed. We may have seen that in our in our previous lives. You might see it day to day when you're working with your clients. What's your take on this?
Yeah, well, I'm finding, right, when leaders build resilience, right, in their teams, right, teams stay focused, morale and performance improves, right? If we're not building in resilience, and what I'm seeing today with like Gallup poll, right, 80% of American workers are disengaged, right? Stress is all at a high time level in employment and in corporate and higher education today, right? So when we don't build in resilience, or we don't use it as a tool, or we don't acknowledge it, right? What we're finding, and I'm seeing in my clients is, right, their decision-making quality drops, right? They can't see. They're just so overwhelmed by what the issue is. So that decision quality drops. Team becomes more reactive instead of proactive. When that happens, it starts draining the culture's energy, right? Our goal with resilience here, right? Our goal is just to navigate the uncertainty and to face our challenges, but with confidence, right? That's the key, and that's why it matters. And I think that's it. It is not the leading cause, but it is a top 10, right? Because people aren't dealing with resilience. They don't know how to deal with it. They're not having the conversation. They're not using it as a tool. They're viewing it, if they have to be resilient because of a failure, they view that as just as a negative instead of a positive, right? So this is why resilience matters.
Yeah, good points. And Nancy put something in the chat that I think is very impactful. Attitude plays a big part in resilience. I think, Nancy, you're spot on with that. I agree with that.
Yeah, totally. It is. It's what the only thing we can control is ourselves, right? And we have to have a self-check sometimes when we go to work, right? We have to say, hey, what's my energy level like? What am I communicating? What's my leadership style coming into work today? What are others seeing? I'm seeing this, but maybe it's not, right? So you're right. Attitude plays a huge part in resilience.
Huge part.
Yeah.
So we're going to be talking about the 7 essential elements for a resilient mindset. 4 of these elements will be focusing on personal leadership, and the other 3 elements focus on team leadership. So we all are leading ourselves. We might be so focused on our teams, but if we're not putting focus on what we are doing and how we're going to overcome adversity, then that could be a little bit of a challenge. But when we talk about resilient leadership, it's easy to think about how I support my team. But the truth is, it starts, as I said, with how you lead yourself. Your team doesn't just listen to you. They feel you. They feel your energy, your reactions, how you handle pressure. This is what sets the tone. So I say we jump right into the 7 elements. Roger,
Yeah.
take it away.
Yeah, totally. Let's do it. And these are 4 personal tips and 3 team leadership tips that we're going to give you today. As leaders manage our own stress and energy, right? We need to manage it, right? Because as a leader, if we're not leading ourselves well, right, we can't lead others well, because you can't give someone else something they don't have, right? So, let's just jump right in. So the first tip we have for you is flexibility, right? Flexibility is short term, right? It's adjusting how we execute. It's changing your path, right? It's not changing the goal, right? It's changing the path. That's flexibility. This is where I focus a lot of my attention with my clients. Sometimes as human beings, we cannot get out of our own way. We have our ways of doing things. We always did it this way, or this is where I'm most comfortable. And that's okay, right? To acknowledge that. But sometimes we have to be flexible, change our communication style. We have to change our leadership style. We have to change a technique or a task at hand to get better results if something's not working. Leaders, when you guide teams through uncertainty, right, you have to make sure you're maintaining clarity of the direction you want to go. But it's navigating those steps that sometimes need to change, right? So that's my take. That's my tip on flexibility. Dawn, what's your coaching advice here, coming from your perspective?
So I believe that things rarely go exactly as planned anymore. Sometimes they do, and that's a really good thing. But the leaders who succeed are the ones who can pivot without losing the momentum. So flexibility, to me, increases options, and options reduce stress. And you might have everything perfectly set up, but somebody comes into the room and they say, you know what? I have an idea I'd like to share with you. And that's when it's so important that we understand what that idea is. And at that point, we might want to be flexible and change what that plan is, because it might be better than what you already have in place. I've seen that over the years. And with my own clients who I'm coaching, if I'm coaching somebody with life coaching or whether it's nutrition, if something just isn't working, then we're going to switch it up. So for instance, it's the holidays and someone has some health goals, and they say, but we've got Hanukkah, we've got Christmas, we have this and that. Okay, we're going to shift, because otherwise we want to set people up for success. So that's flexibility.
Yeah, right. Great points, Dawn.
So the next point is adaptability, right?
Right.
And this is where strategy meets reality. It's not just thinking differently, it's actually changing course when needed. Yeah. So flexibility is a mindset, adaptability is the action. So the goal doesn't change, as you mentioned earlier, Roger, right? The path might change multiple times, but we don't get stuck in that plan. So we have to focus on the outcome. And I believe that it's important that we recognize when something isn't working, being open to new approaches, maybe from colleagues, collaborators, and make decisions without having perfect information. Roger, what's your view on this one?
Yeah, adaptability to me, right? As I lead my clients in vision planning or strategy planning, right? Sometimes they have such a complex goal, right? It's too complex for one goal. So when I work with people and I teach them to try to be adaptable, maybe that goal should be broken down in 3 different goals, right?
Mhm.
And then you have 3 different paths to get there, or multiple paths to get there by being flexible, right? Adaptable is saying, okay, this is too much in one sitting, right? Especially when we're planning strategy, right? We shoot for the stars. We write these beautiful plans, and then the plans get put on the shelf because they're just no one's following them, no one's utilizing, no one's reviewing them, and no one's assessing them, right? So being adaptable is knowing your business, knowing where you're here today, where you're going to be tomorrow, what's the path you're getting there, and just being open when you have to pivot, right? And we're all going to have to pivot. Resources change, economics change, people change, right? I worked with a client that their team lead left, and they put all their resources into that one person, right? So they really had to be adaptable at that point because their strategy didn't work, right? They had to change their strategy to get their expectations and goals down. So, being adaptable is just kind of looking at things, having an anticipatory thinking, using anticipatory thinking, right? Knowing your environment, know what's coming up, what could happen, these are all things being adaptable means and being resilient means.
Absolutely. Roger, there was a time that when I worked at Pfizer, we went through a 3-day drug launch. We were all away. There were a couple thousand people there. And at the end of the actual launch, the VP of this division got onto the podium, got onto stage and said, okay, I have an announcement for everybody. This drug has just been pulled from the market.
Oh, wow.
And so at that point, we had to practice our flexibility and our adaptability. And I'll bring up some other points about how we all felt and what we thought. But at that point, we're like, okay, there's no other option here. We have to be flexible with what our new business objectives are and what we're doing. So,
yeah, right. That's a great example. Changes are going to happen. It's how we react to them and are prepared to react to them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Would you like to go on to resourcefulness?
Yeah, let's do it. All right. So resourcefulness, right? Just the ability to move forward. How are we moving forward, right? Injecting a conversation with your staff or your team or even your senior leaders, if you're on a senior leadership team, right, is talking about what happens, right? Having that staunch acceptance of reality, right? We make these plans, but we need to be aware they might not go as according to plan. So how are we going to be resourceful? And it's what tools we're using. What actions or what backup plans, plan A, B, or C can we use if they fail, right? Here, what I kind of coach my clients on is I adapted the mixed martial arts approach to leadership, right? And being resourceful as a mixed martial artist, there's tons of moves. So you're not going to use all the moves in your toolbox, and you might not use one move all the time. You need to adapt and have others, because sometimes you're going to throw a move and it just doesn't work, right? And now you got to go on defense instead of offense, right? Same philosophy applies in business, right? That's being resourceful, knowing different paths or different collaboration techniques or strategies or contacts to help you move forward, right?
Absolutely. And I would love to add to that. So a couple of, resources that I also focus on is our team, our mentors, our maybe even our cross-functional partners. And as you mentioned the word collaborating with them. Number 2 would be the tools and technology. There are project management tools, there's communication platforms, there's AI, and every day there's a new AI platform out there. Data dashboards. We can leverage Slack, MS Teams, ChatGPT, Claude, Grok, Gemini. Can I keep going on? I'm going to stop there. Also, our internal resources. Never underestimate your experience, your judgment, and your past wins, and most importantly, your past failures.
Yeah.
I've learned more from my failures, Roger, and everyone, than I have from my wins. And we all have them. We all have them. And then the last one would just be your time and energy. You need to protect your energy, because if you're running on empty, like picture a car, okay? If you're running on empty, you're not a resource to anybody, including yourself. So protecting your energy is important.
Yeah. All great points, right? It's just, we have so much today that we can use. We just have to be open to using it, right?
And also open to asking for support and help, right?
Right. And having that, almost redefining failure too, right? As teams, it's like you just said, we all fail. We're all going to do it. We're human. We've been failing all our lives. Luckily there's more wins than losses. But if you come from a child's approach, when a child learns to walk or talk, they're failing constantly, but they're growing. They're and if we forget that as adults, but if we can harness that creativity, right, and apply that to our daily lives, and it's a tool. But if you don't use it, you're going to lose it. So you really need to practice it. And don't be afraid to try something, and you're going to have a setback, but how we recover from that is really important.
I agree. And so often we wait until we're perfect, or we're striving to be perfect. Listen, that's a big area that I'm working on, was I'll never be perfect. As my mom used to say, perfect in her world is PURFECT.
Yeah,
so,
right.
You just have to go, and then you can correct things along the way, with most things, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. No, too funny. I was going to do a joke there, but I'm always perfect. But yeah, no. We're going to stay away from that, because anybody knows me knows that's not true.
Right.
I call it the Rodney Dangerfield approach to leadership, right? You got to make fun of yourself and make light of it, so you can move forward and learn from it and add value, right? It's all about adding meaningful value to what you're doing.
I agree. I totally agree.
So emotional intelligence, right? This is something that's being talked about a lot. Turn on the news and you're going to see a lot of leaders having a lack of emotional intelligence right now. And I just think it's stemming from a variety of things, right? Just the pressures in business today, AI, again, talent management, competition. People are coming to their office and they're stressed out already, right? Because their life happens. And why does it come out at work? Because they're there the longest, right? That's why it comes out at work. So all these things are dealing with it. We need emotional intelligence, but we're drained by the time we get to work. So Dawn, what advice do you have for our listeners?
Well, I think that emotional intelligence, this is the most sought after skill when working with people. To me, it's all about awareness of yourself and the people around you. It's important for us to have the ability to stay composed with everything around us. You may not be the leader, who really needs to manage their own. You might be the leader who needs to manage their own emotions. And that's okay. If somebody identifies like, I need to become a little bit more emotionally intelligent, that's okay. You can work on that. And there's certain things that can be done. Chaos is going to be around us, but the leaders who actually, they take a moment for themselves, they focus to kind of reset, maybe counting 1, 2, 3 before they respond. They're less reactive. They read the room. It's not about just controlling the emotions, but taking that breather so that they can then assess the situation and then lead it. I think that's important. I mean, I've got all kinds of breathing exercises, but just to pause. So often we're uncomfortable with the dead space, dead air, right?
Yeah, totally.
We feel like we have to say something. But people, I think people look to their leader to see how to respond. If there's a steady leader, there's a steady team. It becomes contagious, and so is stress.
Right. And you nailed that right on the head, right? The leader needs to lead that with, especially with the team or themselves, but taking that moment just to reset.
Yep.
Right. It could be as a group, or if you need individually, I was sharing with you the other day about, just if you really need a reset and you feel the emotions got it, just take a time out from the meeting, go to the bathroom, go to the lavatory, whatever, go take a walk outside. There's so many, take a sip of water, right?
Yes.
There's so many things that you could do with that dead space that will add value not only to you, because if your energy isn't, you're not adding any value to that meeting or that. So now you're someone who is not a contributor. You're not collaborating. You're not being accountable for you, right?
Yep.
So using your emotional intelligence and all these breathing exercises and being aware of your actions. How's my body language? How's my voice? How is my face? Right?
Yes.
Smiling sometimes will just break the tension, right? All these little things are emotional intelligence, people. It's being aware of what we're bringing to that moment.
I agree with that. I'm thinking back to that time that I just told you all about with the drug launch that was pulled. When I think about the leader, and this happened probably 2 decades ago, but when I'm thinking about it, he stood on stage, he was calm, he was cool and collective. He was also reassuring. So we weren't worried like, oh my goodness, am I going to lose my job? Am I not going to have a job? Of course, at the time, Pfizer had a lot of medications, but it was the way he delivered his message to us that made us all feel comfortable. And to me, that was an excellent form of emotional leadership, of leadership, of everything we just spoke about. So emotional intelligence and every type of leadership and intelligence that we've discussed to date, Roger. If anybody has a story that they have had, like they've experienced a situation where they've seen outstanding emotional leadership, emotional intelligence, feel free to put it in the chat. We'd love to hear and see what you are experiencing or what you've experienced. So feel free, while we're talking, if you have anything that you'd like to add, you're welcome to.
Yeah, David put in our opinion, right, is one of the 4 most important or comes first. I definitely think I have one that's important, but Dawn, from your mental health expertise, what do you think?
To me, I think it's truly emotional intelligence.
That's mine.
I do. I think that's skill, because that's just human interaction. It's human interaction, but it's also controlling our emotions. And because whether you're leading a big team or whether you are a team member, even an independent contributor who might be working with people, you're influencing the way people may feel about the given situation, about their job. So I think it's important, because I think emotional intelligence can help build trust too. How about yours? What's your view, Roger?
Yeah, it was a great question, David. Thanks for asking that. For me, emotional intelligence is the foundation, right, that you build everything off from, especially in leadership, right? Leadership starts with leading yourself. Then once you lead yourself well, you can lead others. And then once you lead others well, then collaboratively, you lead the process, right? It all starts with emotional intelligence, because if our vision is cloudy, our communication is cloudy, our mood is cloudy, you're not adding the value, and people don't want to work with you, right? Other things start unraveling when we don't have emotional intelligence. And as an employee or as a leader, right? How am I adding value, even in your personal life, whether you're a father, brother, cousin, whatever it is? How am I adding value in this moment in time?
Right.
And it all stems from how we're delivering our energy, and that comes, from emotional intelligence.
It does. It does, and that's a very good point. And I think that I think with emotional intelligence, and I mentioned this before, and it just piggybacks on what you're talking about. It does build a culture of trust when somebody, emotions are important, and especially, and again, as you said, it's not just at work but at home too. So
right. Right. I mean, think about it. If you were somebody and they're snapping your head off, or they're not even yelling at you, but they're creating negative energy, right? What's our first response? We want to bail. We're looking for the door. We're not hearing what's being really communicated, right? We're hearing the facade, maybe that's the wrong word, but we're hearing the emotion rather than hearing the issue of the problem, right?
Absolutely. When emotional intelligence, I think, is off, that's when very often people will end up leaving a company, when they feel like, I don't know what to do, because I'm working, in a team or for a person who it's like all over the place emotionally. And, they're reactive and so forth and so on. And, there's studies out there that show that more people don't leave the company, they leave their manager, their boss. And so I think that this is an area that is important.
Yeah.
The next topic is supportive environment.
Right. Before we go on to that, I want to get that, but also Nancy just pointed, how do you improve someone's emotional intelligence, right? Great question. And boy, do I want to all the time. But the reality is, Nancy, you can't. All you could do is mirror your emotional intelligence, and you can remove yourself from someone's negative emotional intelligence, right? Or reframe a question or reframe the behavior. Oh, I see you're upset about this. Is there another way you want to share that? Or, you don't want to call them out, but you want to call out the behavior. You don't want to call out the person, right? It's the only advice I could give you. You're not going to try to change someone's emotional intelligence. I've had a lot of experience with working with some challenging individuals, and you just learn how to develop a strategy so you can communicate with it. Maybe sometimes in the moment you just let it go. You ask the person if they want to go for a walk. You share, I can see you're upset about that, something, and then later on say, hey, this is my style. This is what works best for me. How does it work best for you, right? That's a better way than to do that. I don't know, Dawn, you want to add value here?
I think that I think what you said, I agree with it. And I also think that it's from a top-down approach, in maybe setting up some like guidelines for when people are hired, maybe from leadership. Like this is like our standard of work practice. And maybe that's one thing. Another thing is working on reframing. So maybe if somebody says, hey, can you go do this task? Can you work on this project? And they say, no, I've never done that before. If somebody would be so bold to answer it like that. And maybe there's a little conversation about, well, I'm giving you an opportunity, and how about adding the word yet to that? Like, I haven't worked on that opportunity. I haven't worked on that project yet, and I don't know much about it, but I'm willing to learn. And if that's part of like the fabric of an organization from the get-go, like, we're always looking to learn, we're always looking to grow, and we'll be talking about growth mindset in a little while, but that could potentially help. So I think the reframing could be something that could help. But yeah, it's not something that we can necessarily, as Roger said, like teach per se, but how we react to them could definitely play a piece that could help.
Right. Great questions. Thanks, everyone.
Yes.
So leading the team, right? Resilient leaders, they stay focused, they're on the goal, on the task. And at the same time, they're creating a stable team, right? And they keep moving forward with the project, and they might give you gentle nudges, or they might push you in a way that's positive to get through what they need to do. So what advice do you have for a supportive environment, Dawn?
For a supportive environment, supportive means trust. It means having the team work together, collaborating, connection, Roger. It's about helping people, showing people that you're there to support them, to help them move forward when things feel uncertain. Resilient leaders, they keep everyone focused on where we're going. And if the path changes, that's okay. Gathering a consensus by asking, people like, for their input and so forth. I think that helps, that people say, okay, I am part of this team, and I can help the whole project move forward. the team needs clarity and they need calm. And
Yeah.
I'm going to keep using that word trust. There needs to be a culture of trust, collaboration, and connection, because when you have that, no matter what comes into play, people are going to be a little bit more supportive, and it comes from the leader. So it makes everything easier. John Maxwell once said that a leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way.
Yeah.
And it's true. How about you, Roger? Anything you'd like to add? Anything further?
Yeah, no, you really said it well. It is the leadership's responsibility, right, to create that culture and create a supportive environment. And it goes even as far as, how do we conduct ourselves in meetings, right? How does the team respond or react to failure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Creating that environment where it's okay, let's get together and talk about it. We're not blaming people. We're talking about a problem, and we're going to be listening to learn, not listening to cause excuses or, listening to just hear ourselves talk, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's that leadership really needs to guide that for the team. Even
Mm-hmm.
for ourselves, when we lead ourselves, right? We got to be aware of, how do we react to failure? What's our go-to method? And if our go-to method is more self-destructive, well, let's seek out other resources. Let's use our emotional intelligence, right, to find out a way on how to be supportive. But I've known clients that, had to even spell out an agenda, how people were going to react in meetings, right? How people were going to react to a process for problem solving, right? One of the clients I work with, we put up what I call 4 corners. We put up questions that were failures, but we turned them into questions, and we gave everyone Post-its, and everyone came in the room and they were just putting Post-its up, right? Great way to think of strategically thinking about a problem and putting words into action, right?
Mm-hmm.
Without blaming, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all these things that you could do to create a supportive environment are easy to do. They don't take a lot of technology. They just take time, practice. And like I said, I like to, say to my clients, patience, love, and understanding, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I like that practice. That sounds really interesting. The 4 corners you said, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
We've done something similar to that when I worked at Gartner, and we got a lot out of it. It really gets people to talk, open up a little bit, right?
Right. It's using everyone's senses, right? They're seeing it, they're hearing it, they're feeling the paper, they're feeling, it's just, it's a great way to strategize.
Absolutely. I think that's great. Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
I think it's also important that a leader will also, if they see that somebody is hesitant, overwhelmed, or maybe they're holding back, that they ask, ask each person individually, so have a one-on-one, ask what's working, ask what's not working.
Yeah.
Because once we uncover that, and maybe that person's going to be less inclined to say this in a group, but maybe more one-on-one. And if that leader has somebody in between the quote unquote team, let's say a project team, and them, maybe it's a good idea for a relationship to be developed, even a light one where there's comfort, so that the people where there might be a person in between, like a manager, let's say like there's, there's the staff, and then there's a manager, and then there's, let's say, somebody at a higher level. Get to know those people, get to know the team. I think that's really important, because that can help establish trust.
Right.
Yep.
It goes a long way.
It does.
And it doesn't take much. It's just asking questions and being genuine.
Yes.
Right. With the person that you're in. Right. In business environments, we don't have to be best friends, but we just have to be best colleagues. And,
yes.
Just getting to know one another, know the communication style, know the leadership style, and just what's expected of me when I'm coming to a meeting. Right.
Mm-hmm.
What's expected, how am I supposed to be accountable? Like, and discuss how each of us are going to be accountable. Right. So perfect. So growth mindset. That's our next tip for a team.
Mm-hmm.
So Dawn, why don't you lead this one and
Okay.
can add some value.
So it's not just about encouraging growth. It's about creating an environment where growth is expected, it's supported, and it's normalized. So most people want to grow. They just need the space and support to do it. So normalizing learning in conversations is at the end of a meeting, I think is important. So for instance, like ask, a question about, so what did we learn from this? Okay. And maybe just jot it down, or, a 5-minute reset once a week to ask what worked, what didn't work, and what can I do better next time? And ask people to share one thing that they're working on. Of course, a growth mindset can include, it could, of course, include trainings and things of that nature. But in terms of, just mindset, it means advancing and not staying at a stagnant place. I think, once we go to these meetings to see, like, let's hear, like, what's working, what isn't working. And other people might value from that too.
Yeah.
What do you think, Roger? Anything additional?
I mean, for growth mindset, I mean, especially in business today, right? We're talking about being resilient leader. It's just normalizing conversations about uncertainty, right? Having that learning opportunity about what someone is saying, and then build distributed resilience into your team. In other words, not one person is solely accountable. You all are, right? So understand that, so you can all add value to that. That's so important, I think. Approaching that mindset. We all have expertise. We're all going to add value. Some might add value quicker than others, but it doesn't mean that someone's not adding value later on, right? It's all about hearing what options we have, and learning something we don't know.
Yep. And what comes to mind as soon as I heard you say that, what comes to mind is AI. Yeah. AI is going to impact every single one of us, and it can help us get ahead. Or if we say, nope, don't want to learn it, that's not necessarily a growth mindset. So, that's something that I definitely, I'm speaking to my clients about, and how important it is. And some of them are like, can we bring in trainings on this, for the companies that aren't tech companies, of course. Right. And, we're talking about that. And they don't need to become gurus, but to have, some information. But that would be a growth mindset, something that maybe that they might say, well, that's not my role. I do X, Y, and Z, and I'm never going to have to use technology. Well, it might be beneficial for you to, with it. So clear vision, Roger, that's our next topic.
Yep. Right. So especially with teams, and I do a lot of teamwork with my clients, right? There's 3 things I like to talk about teams. You got to have a clear vision, and you all have to have the same clear vision, right? Some of my trainings, I'll ask my participants, describe a forest for me, and everyone describes a forest. Well, my vision of the forest was actually a redwood forest in California, but I didn't say that, right? My vision wasn't clear on purpose, right? People were describing tropical rainforest. Some were discussing a Mississippi pine forest, right? Or a New England, foliage in the fall, right? Everyone has to understand the same vision, right? And clearly articulate with each other. If you don't do that, communication gaps fall, then performance falls. It's just, without vision, and everyone has to have the same vision, you're not going to be there. So what do you think, Dawn?
I agree. I agree that a clear vision is going to create alignment and momentum, and an unclear vision causes nothing but confusion. So, asking questions: where are we going? Are we okay? Leaders bring the team back to the big picture. So, other questions could include, like, what's your perspective? How can I prepare? Right. I'm going to have I'd like to have a meeting with you, Roger. I'd like to have a meeting, and I'm sure you're going to ask me, like, well, okay, but, like, what's this about? Right. People may have different visions of the clarifying questions, but they really do help. And one thing that I find valuable in in an organization over the years was always having an accountability partner. It can be valuable to help each other. And I think it's also important that we respect each other and show respect to others, even the people that we don't quite understand. Maybe take some time to get to know those people.
Right.
You know, one practice is maybe at lunch, like sit with somebody who you don't normally sit with. Get
There
to
you go.
know somebody who that, you know, maybe that you might have a vision of who that person is, but in reality, you're saying, I really don't know that person. Get to know them a little bit. And you might find that you're much more even aligned personally than you ever could have imagined.
Ah, absolutely. Well said.
Thank
Well
you.
said. In a matter of time, and we're
Yes.
looking at time, so we'll just keep going. We'll definitely give you some Q&A at the end. I know we're approaching the 10 of 12 people, so we will make sure we're on time.
Yep.
So that resilient perspective, right? You know, we need to share that with our teams, right? And we need to share how to be adaptable, how to grow, how to be strong. Acknowledge the thing here that resilient perspective that's really needs to be driven home here, right? Is acknowledge the difficulty, right? Especially when you're working with your team. Acknowledge that they're going through tough times. Acknowledge that failure. Acknowledge that thing. But okay, you're acknowledging it, right? It happened. But then say, okay, here's what's possible, right? Here's where we can go. Here's what we can do with that. So that's to me is the resilient perspective is acknowledging, but then moving forward despite of the acknowledgement.
I couldn't have said it any better. Why don't we move over to the mindset shift? How's that?
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect. So go ahead, Dawn. What's your advice for us on this?
So, you know, my voice, what I'm thinking about with this is that we have to change how, as exactly as it's written here, how we approach setbacks. And these are a couple of practices that I suggest. This is an approach. 1, pause and reframe. Number 2, change the language. Instead of saying this failed, how about saying this didn't work yet? Instead of saying this is a problem, say this is something we get to solve. Share the lesson. Talk about what we learned, right? That would be a mindset shift. Look for the next step, or actually share the lesson, you know.
Yeah.
And once we talked about what was learned, you know, make sure that, you know, people have a voice and they can explain what they're thinking. Look for the next step. Normalize it. Sometimes there is going to be discomfort, and letting people know that it's not always going to be smooth sailing. And some of the best, listen, when the iPhone was created, you know that there were certain things that failed until they got to success, and they learned from every failure. And that's the case with every organization, because there's always going to be change. For organizations that are 10, 20, 50, even 5 years new, there's always going to be, even 1 year new, there's going to be lessons learned, and there has to be a mindset shift. And it's not of this was complete failure. No, like, let's look at this and let's see how we can learn from this. How about you? What is your thought, Roger?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's just changing how we interpret what's going on and how we respond, right? It's as a resilient leader, you know, we're seeing setbacks as positive feedback, right? Or just feedback. Like you said, change the narrative. Movie comes to mind, which I think this is such a great mind shift, right? Dumb and Dumber, right? And he asked the girl, will you marry me? And she goes, not in a million years. And he goes, well, you're telling me there's a chance, right? That's a huge mindset shift. I know it's a goofy movie, but having that perspective, right? Or having seen the opportunity out of it, you don't know what's going to come from seeing that opportunity. Right? So
it's true. It's true.
Perfect. All right. So now we're going to culture. And individuals, we're almost there. You know, we're almost done.
Yep.
So culture, Dawn, share some insight on that.
Okay, so when resilience is built into this culture, teams, they don't panic when things change. You can talk about resilience all day long, but if it's not part of the culture, it doesn't last. Peter Drucker, he stated that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So you might have a good strategy, but if the culture's not there, then we don't have much. Teams don't just follow policies, they follow patterns. They watch how leaders respond to pressure, to change, and to setbacks. And that becomes the culture. So the question is do people feel safe speaking up? Do they feel supported when things don't go perfectly? And do they understand the bigger picture? I do a lot with teams, with team engagement. And that's something that when I'm speaking to an organization, I find out first, like how their team engagement is and what they want to work on. And many, many times it's culture. But there are places I've been to, even recently, where culture seems extremely strong, where the longevity of the client has, not the client, of the employees has been a long time. Roger, anything that you'd like to add? And I'm talking quickly right now, purposely.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get it. No, you said it well, right? Culture is everything, and this is where, at least in America, our workforce is struggling with, right? Is culture. 5 different generations in the workforce, 5 different expectations, 5 different visions, competition, you name it, right? Leaders just have to find a way to drive culture. You can't throw pizza at individuals and think culture is going to turn around. You can't have happy hours at work, and you know that's nice, but it doesn't drive culture. You know, people drive culture. Being on a team drives culture. Communication, vision, purpose. You know, my purpose, my value drives culture, right? You know, and as an employee of that company, I want to be valued. I want to be listened to, and I want to add, right, meaningful work to what we're producing. And that's culture. That's how we fix culture.
So true. So true.
All right. So we got one more slide, and then we can open it up for Q&A. So
Yep.
Results, right? Resilience, right? Remember, resilience is the driver of performance, right? It's not just a way to respond to difficulty, right? When resilience is applied with the 7 tips that we gave you, right? That's going to drive performance and not just be a reactor to it, right? Resilient leaders don't just survive challenges. They actually perform better because they know how to navigate them, because they have the confidence, they have the collaboration. Each member of the team knows how to be resilient and apply resilience to make the work meaningful and alignment with the vision of what you're trying to accomplish, right? You know, that the bottom line, that's results.
Yep, absolutely.
So what do you think, Dawn? Want to add a comment here? Or?
I'm going to add one more comment. And just like in conclusion to, you know, when we look at everything we've talked about today, it all comes back to one thing. At the end of the day, this isn't about adding more to your plate. It's about how you show up, especially when things get hard, because your team is always watching. They're watching how you handle stress, how you respond to challenges, how you carry yourself when things aren't going as planned. And whether you realize it or not, that's what shapes your team.
Yeah.
So if you take one thing from today, just start paying attention to how you show up under pressure. Roger, would you add anything to that? Like
Not at all. That's perfect. Yeah, you know, again, just like anything, you know, it takes practice to be resilient. We do it naturally as human beings. But you know what? If we're not applying it as often as we should, our approach to resilience could be a little rough. But the more you approach it, the more you discuss it, the more you practice it, the better you will become.
Yep. So shall we open up the Q&A?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm gonna add the giveaway.
Yes, perfect. So the giveaway individuals will be in the chat, the link to it. If you go to our website, if you can't get to it today, it'll be, Dawn, is it okay? It will be on our websites. We'll put it up there.
Yes, mine will eventually be on my website, but I'm also going to have it on my LinkedIn too.
Okay, perfect. And same with the recording will be on our website, and also the handout, the PowerPoint presentation.
So
all right, go ahead.
No, go right ahead.
Regarding clear vision, were you referring within each department or overall company vision or both, right? From my leadership perspective and my performance perspective, you need both, right? You have to have the overall vision, but then you have to have your vision of how you're going to. Each department needs to come up with a vision on how they're going to meet the company goal, right? Or the company mission or the company's vision, right? So it is both. Dawn, what do you think?
I agree. I do agree. I think both. There has to be one for just that department, and then a greater one too.
Love this question. Who's responsible for developing the vision? Right? Great question. What my perspective, right? Your company's vision is your senior leaders, right? And they should be doing appointing people throughout the company to help them write that vision, right? Mm-hmm. Then the team's vision, right, is up to the team lead, whoever that is, a director, VP, coordinator, whatever that title is. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to take it a step further. My vision for my team has got to be developed by me, right? How am I going to be the X to complete the Y? What value am I adding? What's the path I'm leading, right? And that's where I think a lot of individuals don't come from, is they see the company's vision, they see the department's vision, but they don't have a vision themselves to get to point A to point B. Mm-hmm. And this is something you could bring to your review, right, with your manager or your team supervisor, or whatever it is, right? You have a say in that. So why not create that vision for yourself?
Mm-hmm. I agree. And that also gives a voice to the individual too.
Yes. And today people say, I don't have a voice. Why should I care? I'm disengaged because no matter what I do or say, doesn't matter. Well, you might not have a say up, but in your own work, you have a say in what you do. I mean, yes, you have the job description. You got to do that job description, right? You're not going to create your own job description, but you have a say in how you do the work. I mean, you have a say.
And Nancy asks, is it possible to recover resiliency in a team that has been disengaged? And I believe that is possible. One thing that I've seen work before is creating not more work, but pulling some people and asking for volunteers, to have people, maybe form a little bit of a pod. And a pod that's going to be listened to, so that maybe with some specific questions that are given to this pod, so that they can then talk about maybe developing that vision. And maybe those particular employees who are disengaged, maybe there's a specific reason. And, understanding maybe what that reason is, maybe they would be the right person for that pod, or maybe they're not going to be the right person for the pod, but seeing what their views are, maybe in the performance reviews. And if not everybody's getting a performance review, I think and maybe calling it something else, maybe that could be something that could help.
Yeah, my perspective is, Nancy, it's possible, but it's tough. It takes a lot of work, especially if the team really there's issues, there's history. There's a lot of healing that needs to take place. So that needs special care. Special care means you need to collaborate with other resources to help you build that trust, that work team approach again. But absolutely, it's definitely, it's reasonable. It's a reasonable ask, but it's going to take a lot of work.
Absolutely. Roger, have you worked with teams on this type of thing in the past?
Yes. Yeah. I just worked with a client last August. They were having challenges with leadership. They had a lot of leaders at different spectrums. Some were new, some were in the middle, some were very young, experience, not age, right? So they had this collaboration of experiences, and they just had challenges with work styles, communication styles, and their approach and how to get it done. So that led to a lot of challenges individually. So we did a lot of work, but after about 5 sessions, about 8 hours, we were able to get to a point where they started building. They started repairing. They started adding value to relationships. So thanks for asking that question. But yes.
Good. Does anybody else have any further questions? It's 1:03, and we just want to be respectful of your time.
Yes.
And if not,
yeah,
we just want to say thank you for joining.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. Hope this added value to your day. Feel free to visit our websites, reach out if we could help you in your work. But appreciate it. And Dawn, I would like to thank you for collaborating with me. This is a privilege for me. So I appreciate your time as well.
Thank you, Roger. It was my pleasure, and this was a lot of fun. So thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Make it a great day. Take care.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.